The air crackled with tension as Commander Zephyra Sennroth faced down 7 leather-clad bikers in the dimly lit Duskforge Trading Post. Her naval uniform stood in stark contrast to their weathered leather jackets emblazoned with the snarling wolf emblem of the Obsidian Wraiths. No one in Mistral's Edge could have predicted that this ordinary hardware store would become the epicenter of a confrontation that would change their town forever. What happened next would not only shake the foundations of this sleepy coastal community, but would reveal a truth that had been buried for over 2 decades. Before we dive into this incredible story that has captivated millions across social media, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. This is the kind of content you won't want to miss, and trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. Now, let's rewind to where it all began. Commander Zephyra Tempest Sennroth stood at the window of her office at Naval Base Skyhaven, watching storm clouds gather over the Pacific Northwest coast. Her fingers traced the edge of the letter that had arrived that morning, her final assignment before retirement. After 23 years of service, breaking barriers, and proving herself in a male-dominated world, she was being asked to oversee the decommissioning of her beloved base. The irony wasn't lost on her. As the last female commander in this sector, she would also be its last commander, period. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on her shoulders, like the medals she wore on her dress uniform. The base had been her sanctuary since the incident in Kandahar 15 years ago, an operation that had cost her both her team and her faith in the system she'd sworn to protect. The official reports painted it as a successful mission, but the truth lay buried in classified files and in the nightmares that still woke her in cold sweats. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called out, her voice carrying the authority that had become second nature over the years. Admiral Isolde Valkyrie Wolfram stepped into the office, her presence commanding respect despite her small stature. She was one of the few who knew the full story of Kandahar, one of the few who understood what this base really meant to Zephyra. The town council meeting went as expected, Admiral Wolfram reported, her expression grim. Mayor Moonshadow is pushing for immediate closure, says the community needs the land for development. Zephyra's jaw tightened. And the Obsidian Wraiths? Their influence had nothing to do with this decision? Officially? Number unofficially. Admiral Wolfram let the sentence hang. Everyone knew the motorcycle gang had been gaining power in Mistral's Edge, their legitimate businesses serving as fronts for operations that no one dared question. Alaric Voss was there, the Admiral continued, referring to the gang's leader. He made quite the impression with his talk of community development and economic growth. Zephyra turned from the window, her steel-gray eyes reflecting the approaching storm. The same Alaric Voss whose brother died in Kandahar? The one who swore vengeance on the naval command that abandoned his brother? The very same, Admiral Wolfram confirmed, though he claims that's ancient history now. Zephyra picked up the framed photo on her desk, her team from Kandahar, all smiling, unaware of what awaited them. She had carried the weight of that day for 15 years, the truth locked away in a classified file that could never see the light of day. Now, with the base's closure, those ghosts were threatening to resurface. "I need to head into town," Zephyra announced, placing the photo back on her desk. "The hardware store closes early today, and we need supplies for the decommissioning." Admiral Wolfram's expression shifted to concern. "Duskforge Trading Post? That's Obsidian Wraith territory now. Let me send someone else." "No," Zephyra's voice was firm. "I won't hide from shadows, real or imagined. Besides, Riven Kairoth is an old friend. He was there. Before Kandahar." As she drove her weathered pickup truck into town, the storm clouds followed, casting an ominous shadow over Mistral's Edge. The small coastal town had changed since she'd first arrived at Skyhaven. The quaint shops and friendly faces had given way to emptier streets and wary glances. The Obsidian Wraiths' influence had spread like a slow poison, subtle but undeniable. Pulling up to Duskforge Trading Post, Zephyra noticed 3 motorcycles parked outside, black machines customized with the gang's wolf emblem. Her hand instinctively moved to her side where her service weapon would normally be, finding only empty air. She had stopped carrying it in town years ago, a gesture of trust that now felt naive. As she stepped out of her truck, thunder rolled across the sky, and the first heavy drops of rain began to fall. The old brass bell above the store's door chimed as she entered, announcing her presence to whatever awaited inside. What she didn't know was that this simple supply run would trigger a chain of events that would force her to confront not only the ghosts of Kandahar but also the very nature of truth, justice, and redemption. The storm that was gathering wasn't just in the sky. It was in the hearts and minds of everyone in Mistral's Edge, and before it was over, nothing would ever be the same. The interior of Duskforge Trading Post was dimly lit, with dust motes dancing in the few rays of stormy daylight that managed to penetrate the grimy windows. The smell of motor oil, sawdust, and old metal filled the air, scents that reminded Zephyra of the base's maintenance bay. 3 members of the Obsidian Wraiths stood near the counter, their leather cuts bearing patches that marked them as senior members of the gang. Riven Kairoth, the store owner, was behind the counter, his weathered face tight with barely concealed tension. His eyes met Zephyra's, and she saw the warning there, the silent plea to turn around and walk away. But 23 years of naval service had taught her one thing: never back down when backing down means surrendering to fear. Commander Zephyra, Riven's voice carried forced casualness. Wasn't expecting you today. Thaddeus Raven Malachi, the tallest of the bikers, turned slowly at the sound of her rank. His scarred face twisted into something between a sneer and a smile. Well, well, the Queen of Skyhaven herself gracing us with her presence. Zephyra ignored him, walking purposefully toward the industrial supply section. She needed cable ties, heavy-duty locks, and security seals for the decommissioning, items that suddenly felt ironic given the situation. As she moved through the narrow aisles, she could hear the bikers' boots on the wooden floor, following at a distance. "Heard your little kingdom's coming to an end," Lysander Void Callisto called out, his voice echoing off the metal shelves. "Must be hard watching everything you built just disappear." Her hand tightened on the shopping basket until her knuckles went white. They were baiting her, trying to crack the professional mask she'd worn for so long. Images from Kandahar flashed through her mind. The ambush, the screams, the classified files that held the real story. "Tell me, Commander." Maeve Spectre Thanatos, the only female member of the group, stepped into view at the end of the aisle. "Do you still see their faces? The ones you left behind?" Zephyra's pulse quickened. There was no way they could know about Kandahar, about the choice she'd been forced to make. Those records were sealed, buried under layers of national security protocols. Unless... "You seem tense, Commander." Thaddeus moved to block the other end of the aisle. "Anything you want to share with the class?" "Any confessions to make?" The fluorescent light above them flickered, casting strange shadows across their faces. In that moment, Zephyra felt the weight of 15 years of silence pressing down on her. The carefully constructed walls she'd built around that day began to show their first cracks. "I'm here to buy supplies," she said, her voice steady despite the storm building inside her. "Nothing more." "Supplies for what?" Lysander pressed. "For packing up? Running away? That's what you're good at, isn't it? Running when things get tough?" The basket dropped from Zephyra's hand, its contents scattering across the floor. The sound of metal hitting wood echoed through the store like a gunshot. Behind the counter, Riven reached for the phone, his fingers hovering over the keypad. "You don't know what you're talking about." Zephyra's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You weren't there." "No," came a new voice from the store's entrance. "But my brother was." Alaric Cypher Voss stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his leather jacket. The leader of the Obsidian Wraiths moved with casual confidence, each step deliberate as he approached. Unlike his followers, there was nothing theatrical about him. His presence was cold, calculated, and carried the weight of personal vendetta. "Marcus Voss," he continued, "Navy SEAL, 2nd class, part of Operation Nighthawk. Ring any bells, Commander?" The name hit her like a physical blow. Marcus Voss had been one of the 6 men on that last mission. His body had never been recovered, listed as MIA in the official reports. But Zephyra knew the truth. a truth locked away in those classified files. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the store in stark white for a moment. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. In that flash, Zephyra saw something in Alaric's eyes that chilled her more than any threat could. Certainty. He knew something, or thought he did, about what really happened that day. "Your brother was a hero," she managed, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Was he?" Alaric moved closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Is that what helps you sleep at night, Commander? Telling yourself that everyone who died that day was a hero? That you had no choice?" The other bikers had formed a loose circle around them, watching the exchange with predatory interest. Riven had the phone in his hand now, but hadn't dialed. He knew, as everyone in the store knew, that this confrontation had been brewing for years. "You want to talk about heroes?" Zephyra felt something snap inside her, a hairline fracture in 15 years of carefully maintained control. "You want to know what a hero looks like? A hero looks like watching your team die while you're ordered to maintain radio silence. A hero looks like carrying secrets that eat at your soul because the truth would destroy more lives than the lie." The words had come out before she could stop them, hanging in the air like smoke. Alaric's eyes narrowed, and she saw the moment her partial confession registered. She'd given him something, a crack in the official story he could exploit. "Now we're getting somewhere," he said softly. "Maybe you're ready to tell the truth about what really happened to my brother, about the real Operation Nighthawk." Thunder rolled overhead, and the lights flickered again. Zephyra looked around at the faces surrounding her, the vengeful brother, the loyal gang members, the worried store owner. She had maintained her composure through countless storms, but this one threatened to tear away every defense she'd built. "The truth," she said finally, "isn't always what we think it is. And sometimes, Alaric, the truth is classified for a reason." She bent down slowly, picking up the scattered supplies, aware of every eye in the store following her movements. As she stood, she met Alaric's gaze again. "Your brother deserved better," she said quietly. "They all did. But this," she gestured at the intimidating circle around her, "this won't change what happened. It won't bring him back." "No," Alaric agreed, his voice hardening. "But it might bring justice. And trust me, Commander, this is just the beginning. By the time that base closes, everyone will know what really happened in Kandahar. Every single detail." As she walked out of the store, supplies in hand, Zephyra felt the first real tremor of fear she'd experienced since that day 15 years ago. Her carefully constructed world was beginning to unravel, and she knew that this confrontation was only the first thread being pulled. The storm that had been threatening all day finally broke in earnest, rain pouring down in sheets. But the real storm, she knew, was just beginning, and this time there would be nowhere to hide from the truth. 3 days after the hardware store incident, tension in Mistral's edge had reached a fever pitch. Rumors about Commander Sennroth and Operation Nighthawk spread through the town like wildfire, each retelling more dramatic than the last. The Obsidian Wraiths had made sure of that, whispering their version of events to anyone who would listen. Zephyra sat in her office at Skyhaven, staring at the red folder marked Classified on her desk. She'd pulled it from the secure archives that morning, her personal copy of the Kandahar files, kept as insurance against exactly this type of situation. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran her fingers over the seal. A knock at her door made her quickly slide the folder into her desk drawer. "Enter." Admiral Wolfram stepped in, her face grave. "We have a situation. The Obsidian Wraiths are holding some kind of rally at Duskforge. Alaric Voss is making a public statement about Operation Nighthawk." Zephyra's chair scraped against the floor as she stood abruptly. "He can't. That information is classified. He'll be compromising national security." "He claims to have proof," Admiral Wolfram said quietly. "Documents, photographs, things that weren't in the official record." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "That's impossible. Everything was contained in the classified files. Unless someone made copies," Admiral Wolfram's words hung in the air like smoke. unless someone on that mission wanted insurance of their own. Zephyra's mind raced. Marcus Voss had been their communications specialist. He would have had access to the transmission logs, the coordination details, everything that had been carefully omitted from the official report. "I have to stop him." She grabbed her keys from the desk. "Before he destroys everything we sacrificed to protect." "Zephyra, wait." Admiral Wolfram caught her arm. "Think about what you're doing. This is exactly what they want, to draw you out, make you react." But Zephyra was already moving, her boots echoing down the corridor. The classified folder sat forgotten in her desk drawer as she strode to her truck, her mind filled with images from that day in Kandahar. The faces of her team, the sound of gunfire, the impossible choice she'd been forced to make. The drive into town was a blur. Rain had started again, heavy drops hammering against her windshield like accusations. As she approached Duskforge Trading Post, she could see the crowd gathered outside. At least 50 motorcycles lined the street, their chrome gleaming dully in the gray light. Alaric Voss stood on the bed of a pickup truck, his voice carrying over the rumble of thunder. "For 15 years we've been fed lies about what happened to our brothers in Kandahar. For 15 years the Navy has hidden behind classifications and security protocols. But today, we have proof." He held up a weathered manila envelope. "My brother wasn't just another casualty of war. He was abandoned, left behind by the very people who were supposed to have his back, and the person responsible," he pointed directly at Zephyra as she pushed through the crowd, "is right here." The crowd parted like water, creating a path between her and Alaric. She could feel the weight of their stares, hear the murmurs rippling through the assembled bikers and townspeople. "Go ahead, Commander." Alaric's voice dripped with challenge. "Tell them what really happened. Tell them about the radio calls for help that you ignored. Tell them about the coordinates you gave that led my brother and his team into an ambush." "You don't know what you're talking about." Zephyra's voice cut through the murmurs. "The mission was more complicated than you could understand." "Then explain it." Alaric jumped down from the truck, landing heavily in front of her. "Explain why 6 good men died while you made it out without a scratch. Explain why the official report is full of holes and contradictions." Rain plastered her hair to her face as she stared him down. "Some things have to stay buried, Alaric. For everyone's sake." "Not anymore." He pulled papers from the envelope, holding them up for the crowd to see. "I have the real transmission logs here. The ones that prove you received their distress calls. The ones that show you gave the order to maintain radio silence even as they were being slaughtered." Something inside Zephyra snapped. 15 years of carrying that burden, of maintaining the lie, of protecting a truth too terrible to reveal. It all came crashing down in that moment. She lunged forward, grabbing the papers from his hands. Before anyone could react, she tore them in half, then quarters, her actions fueled by a rage that had been building for a decade and a half. "You want the truth?" she screamed, throwing the torn papers into the rain. "The truth is that your brother died because he was following orders. My orders. Orders that came from so high up the chain of command that they didn't even have classification levels." The crowd had gone deathly silent, watching as their respected commander finally broke. Riven Kairoth stood in the doorway of his store, his face a mask of concern. He was one of the few who knew what was coming. "We were sent in to eliminate a target," Zephyra continued, her voice raw with emotion. "But the target wasn't what we were told. It wasn't insurgents or weapons, it was evidence. Evidence of something so damning that 6 good men had to die to keep it secret." Lightning split the sky, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. In that brilliant flash, everyone saw the tears streaming down Zephyra's face, mixing with the rain. "Your brother figured it out," she said, looking directly at Alaric. "He realized what we were really there to do, and he made copies of everything, every transmission, every order, every dirty secret we were sent to bury. That's why he couldn't be allowed to make it home." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the rain seemed to pause as the implications of her words sank in. She had just revealed classified information in public, effectively ending her career. But more than that, she had cracked open a door that had been sealed for 15 years. "Commander Sennroth!" Admiral Wolfram's voice cut through the silence. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her expression a mixture of horror and resignation. "You are relieved of duty, effective immediately. Please surrender your credentials." Zephyra's hand moved to the ID badge at her hip, the symbol of everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed to protect. With trembling fingers, she unpinned it and let it fall to the wet pavement. As she turned to walk away, Alaric's voice stopped her. "This isn't over, Commander. The truth doesn't stay buried forever." She looked back at him, her steel gray eyes holding a lifetime of regret. "No, it doesn't. And God help us all when it finally comes to light." The crowd parted again as she walked to her truck, the weight of 2 decades of service falling from her shoulders with each step. Behind her, she could hear Admiral Wolfram giving orders, could sense the ripples of shock still moving through the assembled crowd. She had finally cracked, finally let the mask fall. But as she drove away from Duskforge Trading Post, she realized that this wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of a much larger storm, one that would either wash away the lies of the past or drown them all in the trying. The night after her public breakdown, Mistral's edge seemed to hold its breath. The storm that had accompanied her confrontation with Alaric refused to leave, hanging over the town like a shroud. Zephyra sat alone in her small coastal house, the classified folder from her office spread across her kitchen table, illuminated by flashes of lightning. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Missed calls from Admiral Wolfram, messages from concerned townspeople, and increasingly aggressive texts from numbers she didn't recognize. She ignored them all, focusing instead on the documents before her. After 15 years of keeping these papers sealed, she felt a strange liberation in finally examining them openly. A particularly bright flash of lightning illuminated her window, and for a moment she could have sworn she saw a figure standing in her yard, tall, military straight, wearing full combat gear. When she blinked, it was gone. The image reminded her so strongly of Marcus Voss that her hands began to shake. "You're losing it, Sennroth," she muttered to herself, but the unease remained. Her doorbell rang, making her jump. Through the rain-streaked glass, she could make out Riven Kairoth's broad silhouette. She hesitated before opening the door. "You shouldn't be here," she said as rain gusted in. "It's not safe." Riven stepped inside, water dripping from his jacket. His face was drawn with concern. "Strange things are happening in town, Commander. Things that don't make sense." "I'm not a commander anymore," she reminded him, but he waved off the correction. "The Wraiths are saying they're getting anonymous messages, details about Kandahar that weren't in any reports, not even the classified ones." He paused, looking at her intently. Things only someone who was there would know. Zephyra felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. "That's impossible. There were only 7 of us there, and I'm the only one who made it back." "Are you sure about that?" Riven's voice was quiet. "Are you sure everyone else died?" Before she could respond, her lights flickered and died, plunging the house into darkness. Through her kitchen window, she could see that the power was out across the entire street. Only the occasional flash of lightning provided illumination. "They've been finding things," Riven continued in the darkness. "Old military equipment washing up on the beach, dog tags that shouldn't exist, and there's something else." He hesitated. "What?" Zephyra demanded. "The Naval Base's security systems have been acting up. Cameras catching glimpses of someone in full combat gear. When security investigates, they find nothing but wet footprints. Military-issue boots, size 11. Marcus Voss's size." A thunderous crack shook the house, and in the subsequent lightning flash, both of them saw it. A figure standing in the backyard, wearing desert camo and combat gear, facing the house. When darkness returned, Zephyra fumbled for her phone's flashlight. When she illuminated the yard, it was empty, but there were boot prints in the mud, size 11, military issue. "Tell me what really happened that day," Riven said, his voice barely a whisper. "Tell me why 6 men had to die to keep a secret." Zephyra moved to her table, gathering the classified documents with trembling hands. "It wasn't supposed to be an elimination mission. We were sent to recover something. Evidence of a Black Ops program gone wrong. Something that would have brought down half the military command structure if it had gone public. She pulled out a photograph she'd never shown anyone, a grainy image of what looked like a medical facility. They were experimenting on civilians, Riven, testing new compounds, trying to create something that would make soldiers stronger, faster, more resilient. But it went wrong. The subjects changed. Another lightning flash, another glimpse of the figure, closer now at the edge of her back porch. Marcus figured it out first, she continued, her voice shaking. He found the files, the test results. He wouldn't let it go. Said the world needed to know. That's when the orders changed. Suddenly, we weren't there to recover evidence. We were there to bury it. Permanently. Including your own team? Riven's voice was horrified. I tried to warn them, Zephyra whispered. But they were monitoring our communications. I couldn't. She stopped as her phone's flashlight began to flicker erratically. Through the strobing light, they saw the back door handle turning slowly. Both of them backed away, Zephyra reaching instinctively for a sidearm that was no longer there. The door swung open with a long creak. Wind and rain gusted in, scattering the classified documents across the floor. In the doorway stood a figure, water pooling at its feet. Zephyra's phone light stabilized, revealing empty air where the figure had been. But the puddle remained, and in the water, they could make out a perfect reflection of Marcus Voss in full combat gear, staring back at them. My God, Riven breathed. The classified documents, scattered by the wind, began to move on their own, pages turning as if being read by invisible hands. They stopped on a particular page, the real after-action report that detailed the orders to eliminate any team member who had seen the evidence. He's trying to tell us something, Riven said, his voice shaking. Zephyra picked up the page, her training warring with what her eyes were telling her was impossible. The experiments didn't all fail, she said slowly, realization dawning. Some of them worked too well. What if... She stopped, the implications too terrible to voice. What if Marcus hadn't died that day? What if he'd been taken, become part of the very program they'd been sent to destroy? The lights suddenly blazed back on, making them both jump. The puddle by the door was gone. The documents once again scattered randomly across the floor. But something had changed. The truth that Zephyra had carried alone for 15 years was no longer just hers to bear. As if to confirm this, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message contained only map coordinates and 2 words, still alive. She looked at Riven, seeing in his face the same mix of fear and determination she felt. Get Admiral Wolfram, she said, and tell Alaric Voss I need to speak with him. It's time to finish what started in Kandahar. The storm outside intensified, as if nature itself was responding to the weight of secrets finally coming to light. Something had been set in motion, something that couldn't be stopped. The echo of her public breakdown was transforming into something far more dangerous, a revelation that threatened to shake the foundations of everything they thought they knew. And somewhere in the rain-soaked darkness, Marcus Voss was waiting. By morning, Mistral's edge had transformed. The storm had finally broken, but the atmosphere in the small coastal town remained charged with tension. News of the previous night's supernatural occurrence at Zephyra's house spread rapidly, though few believed the wilder versions of the story. What they did believe was that something massive was unfolding in their quiet town. Zephyra walked into Duskforge Trading Post just as the sun was rising, notes the stark difference from her last visit. Instead of hostile bikers, she found a mixed group of townspeople huddled around Riven's counter, their conversations dying as she entered. Sheriff Torrin Nighthawk was among them, his usually composed face showing signs of strain. Commander, he acknowledged, deliberately using her former title. You've seen it too, haven't you? She asked directly. The figure in combat gear, the unexplained incidents at the base. The sheriff's silence was answer enough. Behind him, Mayor Callista Moonshadow stepped forward, her silver hair catching the early morning light. 3 more people reported similar sightings last night, the mayor said quietly. All military-trained observers, all describing the same thing, a soldier in desert camo leaving wet footprints that disappear minutes later. And there's more, Riven added, pulling out a folder. People are coming forward with old photographs, documents they shouldn't have. It's like something's compelling them to speak up after all these years. Zephyra spread the new evidence across the counter. Photographs of the secret facility in Kandahar, medical records with redacted headers, transmission logs that she'd never seen before. Each piece added to a puzzle that was becoming increasingly disturbing. The bell above the door chimed. Alaric Voss entered, followed by his core group of wraiths. The tension in the room spiked, but something had changed. The raw hatred in their eyes had been replaced by something more complex, a mix of fear, respect, and desperate need for answers. "We got another message," Alaric said without preamble, placing his phone on the counter. The text showed more coordinates different from the ones Zephyra had received, followed by a series of numbers that looked like a military code. "It's a rotation cipher," Zephyra realized, quickly decoding it in her head. It says, "The program continues. Others like me, hidden in plain sight." What does he mean, others like me? Maeve Spectre? Thanatos asked, her usual bravado replaced by genuine concern. Before Zephyra could respond, Admiral Wolfram entered the store. The crowd parted for her, sensing the gravity she brought to the situation. "We've had a security breach at the base," she announced. "Someone accessed the sealed wing of the medical facility last night. The security cameras caught this." She held up her tablet, showing footage of a figure moving through the darkened corridors with military precision. The image was clear enough to see that the person was wearing desert combat gear, but where their face should have been, there was only a strange distortion. "That's not possible," Sheriff Nighthawk muttered. "That wing has been sealed for years. The security systems are state-of-the-art." "Unless someone had high-level access codes," Zephyra said slowly. "Unless they were part of a program that gave them capabilities we don't fully understand." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. Mayor Moonshadow was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. "Are you saying that whatever they were experimenting with in Kandahar, it worked? That Marcus Voss is some kind of enhanced soldier," Zephyra finished. "One who's been operating in the shadows for 15 years, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment to expose everything." "But why now?" Thaddeus Raven Malachi demanded. "Why wait all these years?" "Because of the base closure," Admiral Wolfram realized. "They're shutting down all the old black sites, destroying evidence. This was his last chance to bring it all to light." The conversation was interrupted by multiple phones buzzing simultaneously. Everyone who had received mysterious messages now got the same text. "Midnight. The sealed wing. Bring them all." Alaric looked at Zephyra, years of animosity giving way to a grudging alliance. "What's your call, Commander?" "This could be a trap." "Of course it's a trap," she replied. "But not for us. Think about it. Marcus has been 10 steps ahead this whole time. He wanted us to break down, wanted the truth to start coming out in pieces. He's been orchestrating everything, bringing all the players together." "For what purpose?" Mayor Moonshadow asked. "Justice," Riven answered quietly. "But not the kind that comes from a courtroom. The kind that comes from exposing a truth so big that it can't be buried again." The group fell silent, each person wrestling with their role in what was to come. The Obsidian Wraiths, once bent on revenge, now found themselves part of something far larger. The town officials, who had tried to maintain order and normalcy, faced the reality that their quiet community had been sitting on a powder keg for years. "We need to be smart about this," Sheriff Nighthawk said finally. "If what you're saying is true, we're not just dealing with a ghost or a cover-up. We're taking on something embedded in the highest levels of military command. We'll need proof," Admiral Wolfram added. "Concrete evidence that can't be disputed or buried." "We already have it," Zephyra said, gathering the scattered documents. "Every person who received a message, every piece of evidence that surfaced, it's all part of a larger picture. Marcus hasn't just been haunting us. He's been building a case, and tonight, he's going to complete it." She looked around at the assembled group, law enforcement, military, bikers, and townspeople, all brought together by a truth too big for any one of them to handle alone. "Whatever happens at midnight," she continued, "it's going to change everything. Not just for us, but for every military base, every secret program, every experiment they ever tried to hide. The question is, are we ready for what that means?" The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of decision. One by one they nodded, committing themselves to a course that would reshape their world forever. As they began to plan for the midnight meeting, Zephyra caught a glimpse of movement outside the store window. A familiar figure in desert camo, watching. This time, she didn't look away. Whatever Marcus had become, whatever truth he was preparing to reveal, she was finally ready to face it. The ripples of her breakdown had become a tidal wave, and tonight, it would break over them all. The hours leading up to midnight felt like an eternity. Zephyra sat in her truck outside the naval base, watching the sun set over the Pacific. The classified documents were spread across her passenger seat, along with new evidence that had surfaced throughout the day. But it was the old photograph in her hands that held her attention. Her team in Kandahar, all smiling, unaware of what awaited them. A tap on her window made her start. Dr. Callista Moonshadow stood there, holding what looked like an old medical bag. The mayor's silver hair glowed in the dying light, and something in her expression made Zephyra roll down her window. "We need to talk," Callista said quietly, not as the mayor to a former commander, but as someone who knows exactly what happened in Kandahar. Zephyra's hand instinctively moved toward her phone, but Callista raised her hands in a peaceful gesture. "I'm not your enemy, Commander. In fact, I might be the only person who can help you understand what really happened to Marcus Voss." After a moment's hesitation, Zephyra unlocked the passenger door. Callista slid in, carefully moving the documents aside. She opened her medical bag and pulled out a worn leather journal. "Before I was mayor, before I came to Mistral's Edge, I was Dr. Callista Moonshadow, PhD in experimental biology, clearance level Alpha 9. She handed Zephyra the journal. "I was one of the lead researchers on Project Prometheus." Zephyra's blood ran cold. "The enhancement program." "Yes." Callista's voice was heavy with regret. "We thought we were creating the next evolution of warfare, soldiers who could operate beyond human limitations. The compounds we developed were meant to enhance strength, speed, healing capabilities. But they did something else too, something we didn't understand until it was too late." Lightning flickered in the distance, another storm approaching. Zephyra opened the journal, finding detailed notes and observations about test subjects. The further she read, the more her hands began to shake. "The enhanced soldiers didn't just become stronger," she said, reading between the lines. "They became something else entirely. The compounds affected their very cellular structure," Callista confirmed. "They could adapt to almost any environment, heal from virtually any wound. But the most unexpected side effect was how it changed their consciousness. They began experiencing what we called quantum consciousness, the ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously." "Like a ghost," Zephyra whispered, thinking of the appearances of Marcus. "More like a being who can shift between different phases of reality at will. That's why Marcus can appear and disappear, why he can be everywhere and nowhere." Callista pulled out another document from her bag. And he wasn't the only one. There were others, earlier test subjects. Some went rogue, some were contained, and some were sent to eliminate evidence of the program's existence, Zephyra finished, the full horror of what happened in Kandahar finally becoming clear. "The team that ambushed us, they were enhanced soldiers too, weren't they?" Callista nodded grimly. The program had already spiraled out of control. When Marcus discovered the truth and made copies of the evidence, they sent their best assets to clean up the situation. They never expected him to survive, let alone retain enough of his humanity to spend 15 years gathering evidence and planning this moment. Thunder rolled closer as Zephyra absorbed this information. "Why are you telling me this now? Why help us?" "Because I've spent years trying to make up for what we created," Callista replied, her voice breaking slightly. "When I came to Mistral's Edge, it was to hide. But then you were stationed here, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything came to light. She reached out and gripped Zephyra's arm. What happens tonight isn't just about exposing a cover-up. It's about facing something we never should have created in the first place. The sealed wing of the medical facility, Zephyra said suddenly. It's not just storage, is it? It's a containment unit, Callista confirmed. One of several across the country where they keep the test subjects who couldn't be controlled. When they announced the base closure, they scheduled those subjects for decommissioning. The way she said the word made it clear exactly what that meant. That's why Marcus chose now to act, Zephyra realized. He's not just exposing the truth, he's trying to save them. Yes, but he can't do it alone. Callista pulled one final item from her bag, a syringe filled with pale blue liquid. This is the last sample of the original compound, the pure form before they started experimenting with more aggressive variants. I've spent years refining it, trying to find a way to help the subjects retain their humanity while keeping their enhanced abilities. Zephyra stared at the syringe, understanding dawning. You want me to take it? You're the only one who can. Your military training, your knowledge of what happened in Kandahar, your connection to Marcus. You're the perfect candidate. But more than that, you're someone who understands the weight of impossible choices. Callista's eyes were intense in the growing darkness. This isn't just about redemption anymore, Commander. This is about making right something that went horribly wrong. Lightning flashed again, closer now, and in the brief illumination, they both saw a figure in combat gear standing at the base's main gate. This time, it didn't disappear when they looked directly at it. Instead, it raised a hand in a clear military salute. Marcus knows, Callista said softly. He's been waiting for this moment just like I have. The question is, are you ready to become something more than human to expose the truth about what humanity has done? Zephyra looked at the syringe, then at the figure by the gate, then at the photograph of her team. 15 years of carrying their deaths, of maintaining the lie, of trying to protect a truth that demanded to be told. Perhaps this was what it had all been leading to. Not just exposure, but transformation. What happens if I take it? She asked. You'll become like him, Callista answered honestly. Able to move between realities, to be in multiple places at once. But more importantly, you'll be able to access the secured areas where they keep the evidence, the test subjects, everything they've tried to hide. You'll become the key to unlocking it all. Thunder cracked overhead as Zephyra made her decision. She took the syringe from Callista's hand, the weight of it feeling like destiny. When the truth comes out, she said, everyone will need to know your role in this. Are you prepared for that? Callista's smile was sad but determined. I've been preparing for it for 15 years, just like Marcus, just like you. As the storm broke over them, Zephyra looked again at the figure by the gate. It nodded once, a gesture of approval and welcome. The time for hiding was over. The time for transformation had begun. The compound burned through Zephyra's veins like liquid fire. She sat in her truck, gripping the steering wheel as waves of transformation racked her body. Beside her, Dr. Callista Moonshadow monitored her vital signs with professional detachment, though concern showed in her eyes. The initial phase is the most intense, Callista explained, checking Zephyra's pulse. Your body is literally rewriting its own genetic code. Try to stay focused on who you are, what matters to you. It helps maintain your humanity through the change. Lightning flashed, and suddenly Zephyra could see everything differently. The world seemed to exist in multiple layers like transparent sheets laid over one another. She could see the physical realm, her truck, Callista, the rain, but also something else. Shadows of what had been, glimpses of what might be. I can see them, she gasped. All of them, the others like Marcus. They were everywhere, these quantum ghosts. Some wore military uniforms from different eras, others civilian clothes. All of them seemed to exist in a state of flux, their forms shifting between solid and transparent. They moved through walls, through people, through time itself. The first wave of subjects, Callista confirmed. The ones who learned to control their abilities. They've been watching, waiting. Some have gone mad from the isolation, but others, like Marcus, have been gathering evidence, building a case. A figure materialized in the back seat, a woman in desert camo, her face bearing scars that seemed to shift and change. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, she introduced herself. Operation Starlight, 2008. Welcome to the program, Commander. More figures began to appear, filling the truck with their quantum presence. Each had a story. Each had been part of the program. Some were volunteers, others unwitting test subjects. All had been betrayed by the very institution they'd sworn to serve. How many? Zephyra asked, her voice hoarse. Hundreds, Sarah replied. Across decades. Different programs, different names, but all part of the same experiment. Some of us went rogue, some stayed loyal, others just tried to survive. But we've all been waiting for this moment. Through the windshield, Zephyra could see more enhanced soldiers gathering at the base's gate. They flickered in and out of visibility, their forms distorting reality around them. Among them stood Marcus Voss, more solid than the others, his eyes fixed on her truck. "Why me?" Zephyra asked. "Why show yourselves now?" "Because you carry the weight of Kandahar," another soldier materialized. Master Sergeant James Cooper, his uniform bearing Vietnam-era insignia. "You understand the cost of following orders, the price of keeping secrets, and most importantly, you're still human enough to care." The transformation was stabilizing now. Zephyra could feel her new abilities settling into place, becoming part of her. She experimentally reached out with her consciousness and found she could shift her perception, viewing the world from multiple angles simultaneously. "The sealed wing," she said suddenly, her enhanced awareness picking up details she'd missed before. "It's not just a containment facility, is it? It's a gateway." "Very good," Callista nodded. "The quantum state allows for travel between specific points, places where the barriers between realities are thinner. The sealed wing connects to other facilities, other containment units. It's how they transport subjects without anyone knowing." "And tonight?" Zephyra asked, though she was beginning to understand. "Tonight we open all the gates," Sarah Chen said firmly. "We free everyone they've kept locked away, expose every experiment, every cover-up, every lie. But we needed someone like you, someone with authority, with credibility, with a conscience, to make the truth stick." Zephyra stepped out of the truck, her movements feeling both solid and fluid at the same time. The rain passed through her as if she were partly in another dimension. Around her, more quantum soldiers appeared, their forms creating a strange aurora in the storm-dark sky. "Show me," she commanded. "Show me everything." The world shifted, and suddenly she was viewing multiple times simultaneously. She saw the first experiments in the 1960s, soldiers volunteering for what they thought was a simple enhancement program. She saw the gradual escalation, the discovery of quantum effects, the decision to push further despite the risks. She saw Sarah Chen's unit, ambushed in Afghanistan, given the compound as they lay dying. She saw James Cooper's team in Vietnam, used as unwitting test subjects, and she saw Marcus Voss realizing the truth in Kandahar, making the choice to become something more than human, to expose the inhuman things being done. "It's not just about justice anymore," Marcus said, suddenly beside her. "It's about preventing them from starting over somewhere else. They're already planning new programs, new experiments. They never learn." "How do we stop them?" Zephyra asked. "By showing the world what they created," Sarah Chen answered. "Not as monsters or weapons, but as people who chose to sacrifice their humanity to expose the truth." "The quantum state is spreading," Callista added, her scientific detachment cracking slightly. "Each new subject creates ripples in reality. Soon they won't be able to hide anything. The only question is whether humanity is ready for that truth." Zephyra looked at her hands, seeing how they flickered between states of being. She was both here and elsewhere now and then, soldier and witness. In becoming something more than human, she had gained a deeper understanding of humanity itself. "Midnight approaches," James Cooper announced. "The gates will be weakest then. Are you ready, Commander?" Zephyra nodded, feeling the weight of decades of secrets, of countless lost souls, of truth too terrible to remain hidden. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's finish this." Around her, the quantum soldiers began to gather, their forms creating patterns of light in the rain. The storm intensified, as if nature itself was responding to the imminent revelation of long-buried truths. At the base's gate, Marcus Voss raised his hand, and reality itself began to bend. The time for hiding was over. The time for truth had come. The quantum state was both a blessing and a curse. As midnight approached, Zephyra found herself experiencing multiple realities simultaneously, each one showing a different facet of the truth they were about to expose. The compound coursing through her veins made her aware of every timeline, every possibility, every consequence of what they were about to do. "They're coming," Sarah Chen announced, her form flickering between states. 3 tactical teams, heavily armed. They know something's wrong. Through her enhanced perception, Zephyra could see them too. Black vehicles approaching from multiple directions, carrying soldiers who had no idea what they were really facing. But there was something else, something that made her quantum-enhanced blood run cold. They have containment units with them, she realized. And she focused on one of the vehicles, her consciousness piercing through its armored exterior. They're bringing more of the compound, a new version. "They mean to create more of us," Marcus materialized beside her, his expression grim. "Loyal ones this time, soldiers who won't question orders." The gathered quantum soldiers began to shift uneasily, their forms creating ripples in the fabric of reality. Some of them had already experienced what happened when the military tried to control enhanced soldiers. The scars of those attempts were written across multiple dimensions. "We need to move now," James Cooper insisted, "before they can set up a containment field." But Zephyra held up her hand. Something wasn't right. In one of the timelines she could perceive, she saw a different outcome, one that made her question everything they were about to do. "Wait," she commanded. "Look deeper." Using her new abilities, she projected what she was seeing to the others. In this alternate timeline, their assault on the facility succeeded. They exposed the truth, freed the captive subjects, revealed everything to the world. But the consequences were catastrophic. The quantum state began to spread uncontrollably. Reality itself started to break down as more and more people were exposed to the compound. "If we do this wrong," she explained, "we don't just expose the truth, we tear apart the very fabric of existence." "Then what do you suggest?" Sarah Chen demanded. "We can't let them start the program over again." Zephyra turned to Dr. Callista Moonshadow, who had been quietly observing. "The compound you gave me, you said it was different from the others, more stable. Why?" "Because it was designed to maintain balance," Callista explained. "The original compound was about transcending human limitations. This version is about finding harmony between human consciousness and quantum reality." An idea began to form in Zephyra's mind, expanding across multiple dimensions of possibility. "We've been thinking about this wrong," she said. "We don't need to expose everything at once. We need to show them what the program could have been, should have been, if it had been about evolution instead of weapons." Marcus Voss stepped forward, his form more solid than the others. "You want to surrender?" "No," Zephyra smiled. "I want to negotiate, from a position they can't possibly understand." She turned to the gathered quantum soldiers, her voice carrying across both physical and dimensional space. "Each of you exists in multiple states, multiple timelines. You can show them not just what happened, but what could have happened, what still could happen if they make different choices." The approaching vehicles were getting closer. They had minutes at most before the confrontation would begin. But now Zephyra could see the path forward with crystal clarity. "Callista," she turned to the scientist, "how quickly can you synthesize more of the stable compound?" "I have more in my lab," Callista replied. "Enough for maybe a dozen doses." "Get it," Zephyra ordered. "Sarah, James, take a team and secure the sealed wing. Don't open it yet, just make sure they can't lock it down. Marcus, I need you with me." The quantum soldiers began to move, their forms blurring between states as they carried out their tasks. Zephyra could feel reality bending around them, adjusting to accommodate their impossible existence. "What are you planning?" Marcus asked as the others departed. "We're going to show them the ultimate mirror," she replied. "Every possibility, every outcome, every version of what this program could be. When they see the full spectrum of what they've created, both the horrors and the potential, they'll have to make a choice. And if they choose wrong?" Zephyra's form flickered, showing versions of herself across multiple timelines. "Then we show them what happens when you try to control something that exists in all realities at once." The tactical teams were nearly there. Through her quantum perception, Zephyra could see the soldiers preparing their weapons, checking their containment equipment. They thought they were ready for anything. They had no idea what awaited them. "One more thing," she said to Marcus. "I need you to help me reach through to their commander. Show him Kandahar, not just what happened, but what could have happened if they'd chosen differently." Marcus nodded, understanding. In the quantum state, memory wasn't just recall. It was reliving, reshaping, showing all possible variations of a moment in time. The first vehicle rounded the corner, its headlights cutting through the rain. Zephyra stepped forward, letting her form shift between states, becoming simultaneously solid and transparent, present and infinite. "Remember," she said to the gathered quantum soldiers, "we're not here to destroy or expose. We're here to evolve, to show them what humanity could become if they stopped trying to turn transcendence into a weapon." Reality trembled around them as midnight approached. The time for resistance had come, not through violence or exposure, but through the ultimate demonstration of what it meant to exist beyond the boundaries of normal human consciousness. The storm above them intensified, as if nature itself was responding to the convergence of multiple realities. In every raindrop, Zephyra could see a different possibility, a different outcome, a different truth waiting to be revealed. The game was about to change, and this time, they were playing by quantum rules. The tactical teams emerged from their vehicles into the rain, weapons raised, only to freeze at the impossible sight before them. Zephyra stood at the center of a gathering of quantum soldiers, their forms shifting between states of reality, creating patterns of light that defied physical laws. "Stand down," Zephyra commanded, her voice resonating across multiple dimensions. "What you're about to face isn't something you can fight with conventional weapons." The team commander, Colonel Richard Hayes, stepped forward. His face betrayed no emotion, but Zephyra could see, through her quantum perception, the fear and awe battling within him. "Commander Sennroth," he said, his voice steady, "you're in violation of multiple security protocols. Stand down and prepare for containment." Zephyra smiled, and in that smile, Hayes saw echoes of other realities, versions of this moment playing out across countless timelines. "Let me show you something, Colonel." With a thought, she projected the truth of Kandahar, not just what had happened, but every possibility that could have occurred. Hayes and his men found themselves experiencing multiple versions of that day, the official story, the covered-up truth, and the paths not taken. "My God," Hayes whispered as the visions washed over him. "The program, it was never meant to." "To create weapons?" Zephyra finished. "It was meant to expand human consciousness, to help us understand reality in all its complexity. But somewhere along the way, someone decided that understanding wasn't enough. They wanted control." Marcus Voss materialized beside her, his form more stable than before. "Show them the rest," he urged. "Show them what's in the sealed wing." Zephyra nodded and expanded her projection. The tactical team members gasped as they saw through the walls of the facility, into the sealed wing where dozens of quantum subjects were being held. But they weren't just seeing the prisoners. They were experiencing their stories, their transformations, their suffering and transcendence. "These aren't mistakes to be contained," Zephyra explained, her voice gentle but firm. "They're not weapons to be controlled. They're the next step in human evolution, but only if we choose to embrace understanding over power." Sarah Chen appeared, followed by James Cooper and the others, each bringing with them visions of their own experiences. Decades of experiments, successes, failures, and the profound revelations that came with existing in multiple states of reality. "The compound you brought," Zephyra addressed Hayes directly. "The new version. It would create soldiers loyal to command, yes, but it would also fracture reality itself. The quantum state can't be controlled or directed. It can only be understood and accepted." Dr. Callista Moonshadow emerged from the shadows, carrying a case of the stable compound. "I can prove it to you," she said to Hayes. "This version doesn't create weapons or slaves. It creates understanding." Hayes looked at the case, then at his men, then at the impossible gathering before him. Through the quantum visions, he had seen enough to know that everything he'd been told, everything he'd believed, was only a fraction of the truth. "If I stand down," he said carefully, "if I listen, what guarantee do I have that this won't spiral out of control?" Zephyra's form flickered, showing him versions of herself across multiple timelines. Soldier, commander, quantum being, each state maintaining its own integrity while contributing to a greater whole. "No guarantees," she replied honestly. "Only possibilities. But I can show you what happens if you try to contain this by force." She projected one final vision, the catastrophic collapse of reality that would occur if they continued down the path of weaponization. Hayes watched as multiple dimensions shattered, as the quantum state spread uncontrollably, as the very fabric of existence began to unravel. "Stand down," he ordered his men finally. "Lower your weapons." The tactical team members hesitated, then complied. As their weapons lowered, the quantum soldiers began to solidify, becoming more present in this reality while maintaining their connection to others. "Now," Zephyra said, "let's talk about the future. Not just one future, but all possible futures." She gestured, and the air around them filled with images, visions of what the program could become if redirected toward understanding rather than control. Research centers instead of containment facilities, collaboration instead of experimentation, evolution instead of weaponization. "The choice is yours," she told Hayes. "You can try to contain us, to control us, to weaponize what we've become, or you can join us in understanding what humanity could truly achieve." Hayes looked at the quantum soldiers, at his own men, at the facility that held so many secrets. In the rain-swept darkness, reality itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his decision. "Show me," he said finally. "Show me everything." Zephyra nodded to Callista, who opened the case containing the stable compound. As Hayes stepped forward to receive the injection, Zephyra felt something shift in the quantum field. Not a surrender to chaos, but a surrender to possibility. The storm above them began to clear, as if nature itself was acknowledging this moment of transformation. In the distance, lights began to come on in the sealed wing as Sarah Chen and her team prepared to free those held within. This wasn't the end of the story, Zephyra knew. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter, one where humanity would have to face the full spectrum of its potential, for better or worse. But for the first time since Kandahar, she felt truly at peace with her role in it all. They had surrendered not to defeat, but to truth in all its infinite variations. And in that surrender, they had found something far more powerful than any weapon, the ability to see, understand, and shape reality itself. The quantum revolution had begun. The days following what came to be known as the quantum convergence brought changes that no one in Mistral's Edge could have anticipated. The naval base, once a symbol of military might, had become something entirely different. A nexus point where multiple realities intersected and new possibilities were explored. Zephyra stood in what had been the sealed wing, now transformed into a research and integration center. The holding cells had been converted into meditation rooms, their quantum dampening fields repurposed to help new initiates stabilize their transformations. Through her enhanced perception, she could see the layers of reality overlapping, past, present, and possible futures, all coexisting in the same space. "The first group of volunteers is ready," Dr. Callista Moonshadow announced, entering with a tablet displaying vital signs and quantum state readings. Colonel Hayes's transformation has stabilized, and his experience is proving invaluable in helping others understand the process. Zephyra nodded, observing the quantum signatures of the facility's new occupants. Former soldiers, scientists, and even some civilians who had been carefully selected and prepared for transformation. Each one represented a bridge between the old world and the new possibilities they were discovering. "And the Obsidian Wraiths?" she asked, though her quantum perception had already shown her the answer. "Alaric Voss and his core group received the compound this morning," Callista confirmed. "Their military backgrounds made the transition smoother than expected. They're already learning to use their abilities to help locate other subjects from the original program." Marcus Voss materialized beside them, his form now stable enough to interact with conventional reality when he chose. "My brother's people have found 3 more facilities like this one," he reported. "The quantum network is growing. Soon we'll be able to connect all the sites, create a stable framework for this new level of existence." Through the facility's windows, Zephyra could see the town of Mistral's edge below. The community had become a model for how humanity could adapt to the reality of quantum existence. Mayor Moonshadow had worked tirelessly to integrate the enhanced population with regular citizens, creating programs to help people understand and accept the changes taking place. "The Military Oversight Committee arrives tomorrow," Zephyra reminded them. "This is our chance to show them that this isn't just about transcending physical limitations, it's about expanding human consciousness itself." Sarah Chen appeared, her quantum form shimmering with purpose. "The other sites are ready for simultaneous demonstration. We'll show them everything: the successful transformations, the stabilization techniques, the potential for peaceful application of quantum abilities." "And the risks?" Callista asked quietly. "They'll want to know about the failures, the dangers." "We show them those too," Zephyra decided. "Complete transparency across all possible timelines. Let them see both the potential and the responsibility that comes with it." The group moved to the central chamber, once a high-security containment area, now a vast space where quantum energies flowed freely. Here, the enhanced could practice existing in multiple states, learning to navigate between realities while maintaining their core identity. Colonel Hayes was there, working with a group of new initiates. His tactical experience combined with quantum perception had made him an excellent teacher. He looked up as they entered, his form flickering briefly between states. "Commander," he acknowledged Zephyra. "We've made a breakthrough. Watch this." He gestured, and the space around them transformed. Suddenly, they were seeing multiple versions of the same room across different timelines, each one showing a different potential outcome of their project. In some, the quantum state had led to unprecedented scientific discoveries. In others, it had fostered deep spiritual understanding. In still others, it had revolutionized everything from medicine to space exploration. "The key," Hayes explained, "isn't just existing in multiple states, it's understanding how to bridge them, how to bring the best possibilities into our primary reality." Zephyra watched as his students practiced, their forms shifting between states with increasing confidence. Among them, she recognized members of the Obsidian Wraiths, former military personnel, and local townspeople all learning together. "We're creating more than just a bridge between realities," she realized. "We're creating a bridge between different kinds of people, different ways of understanding the world." Sheriff Torrin Nighthawk entered the chamber, his conventional form a stark contrast to the quantum beings around him. As one of the few officials who had chosen to remain unenhanced, he served as an important link to the unchanged world. "The town council has approved the expansion plans," he reported. "We are officially designating Mistral's Edge as a quantum integration zone, the first of its kind." The news rippled through the quantum field, causing brief fluctuations in reality as those present processed its implications. They were no longer hiding in the shadows or fighting against the system. They were becoming the system, transforming it from within. "There's something else," Nighthawk continued. "We've been getting requests from other communities. People who've heard about what's happening here. They want to know if this could work elsewhere." Zephyra shared a look with Marcus and Callista. They had known this moment would come, when their transformation would begin to spread beyond the confines of their small coastal town. "Show me," she told Hayes. "Show me what happens if we expand." The colonel nodded and adjusted his projection. The room filled with visions of other communities undergoing similar transformations. Some succeeded brilliantly, becoming beacons of quantum human integration. Others struggled, facing resistance and fear. But in every timeline where they proceeded carefully, with understanding and compassion, the results were transformative. "We start small," Zephyra decided. "We learn from each success and failure. We build bridges not just between realities, but between communities, between ways of thinking. And we remember what we learned here," Marcus added. "That the key isn't control or power, it's understanding and acceptance." As if in response to their discussion, the quantum field around them stabilized, multiple realities aligning in harmonious interaction. Through the windows, they could see the sun setting over Mistral's edge, its light refracting through layers of reality to create something beautiful and new. They had created more than just a bridge between worlds. They had created a path forward, a way for humanity to evolve without losing its essential nature. And in doing so, they had transformed not just themselves, but the very meaning of human potential. The quantum revolution was no longer coming. It had arrived, one bridged reality at a time. The day of the Military Oversight Committee's visit dawned with an unusual atmospheric phenomenon, multiple suns appearing to rise simultaneously, visible only to those with quantum perception. To Zephyra, it felt like reality itself was acknowledging the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The committee members arrived in a convoy of black vehicles, their formal uniforms and stern expressions a stark contrast to the flowing quantum energies that now permeated the base. General Eleanor Maxwell, the committee head, stepped out first, her eyes widening almost imperceptibly as she took in the transformed facility. "Quite a change from standard protocol, Commander Sennroth," she remarked as Zephyra approached. Through quantum perception, Zephyra could see the general's timeline branching with possibilities. Versions where she embraced the change, others where she fought against it. Each potential future hanging in delicate balance. "Protocol evolves, General," Zephyra replied, letting her form shift slightly between states. "Just as we have. Allow me to show you exactly how." She led the committee into the central chamber, where representatives from every aspect of their quantum integration program waited. Colonel Hayes stood with his successful trainees. Dr. Callista Moonshadow had prepared comprehensive data on the stable compound. Marcus Voss and the other original quantum soldiers were ready to demonstrate the full potential of their abilities. "Before we begin," General Maxwell said, "I want to be clear about our concerns. We've read the reports about Kandahar, about the original program. What assurance do we have that this isn't just another weapon waiting to backfire?" Zephyra smiled and gestured to the space around them. Reality shifted, and suddenly the committee members found themselves experiencing multiple versions of the same moment, seeing not just what was, but what could be, what had been, and what might never come to pass. "This isn't about weapons anymore," Zephyra explained as the committee members gasped and steadied themselves. "It's about understanding. Let me show you what that really means." She nodded to Marcus, who stepped forward and expanded the quantum field. The chamber transformed into a vast space where multiple realities overlapped. In one corner, they could see medical breakthroughs being made as quantum-enhanced doctors perceived all possible treatments simultaneously. In another, scientists used quantum perception to understand the deepest mysteries of physics and space-time. "The stable compound doesn't just enhance physical capabilities," Dr. Callista explained, moving through the demonstrations. "It expands consciousness itself, allowing us to perceive and interact with multiple states of reality while maintaining our humanity." Colonel Hayes brought forward his students, each demonstrating different applications of their abilities. Alaric Voss and the former Obsidian Wraiths showed how they now use their quantum state to locate and help other enhanced individuals. Sarah Chen demonstrated advanced healing techniques that worked across multiple dimensional planes. "But the most important advancement," Zephyra continued, "is this." She gestured and the quantum field shifted again. Now they could see Mistral's edge as it truly was, A community where enhanced and non-enhanced individuals coexisted harmoniously, where quantum abilities were used not for military advantage, but for understanding and growth. "We've created something unprecedented," she told the committee. "Not just a new kind of soldier or scientist, but a new way of being human, one that could help us solve problems we never thought possible." General Maxwell stepped forward, her military bearings slightly softened by wonder. "And the risks? The potential for this to be weaponized? Watch," Zephyra said simply. She reached out with her quantum consciousness, connecting with every enhanced individual in the facility. Together, they created a massive quantum visualization, showing the committee exactly what would happen if anyone tried to weaponize their abilities. The catastrophic collapse of reality, the unraveling of space-time, the utter futility of trying to control something that existed in all states simultaneously. "You can't weaponize understanding," Marcus added quietly. "You can only embrace it or reject it. And rejection," he let the vision of reality's collapse linger, "isn't really an option anymore." The committee members exchanged looks, their trained military minds struggling to process the implications of what they were seeing. But Zephyra could see the moment understanding began to dawn in their quantum-enhanced perceptions. "We're not asking for permission to continue," she said clearly. "We're inviting you to be part of humanity's next step forward, to help guide this transformation responsibly, with wisdom and compassion." General Maxwell was quiet for a long moment, her quantum perception showing her countless possible futures branching from this decision. Finally, she spoke. "You've created something beyond military application," she acknowledged. "Beyond any single institution's control. The question is, are we ready for it?" Zephyra's form shifted, becoming simultaneously more solid and more quantum as she answered. "Humanity is always ready for understanding. We just need the courage to embrace it." The quantum field pulsed with possibility as the general nodded slowly. "Very well, Commander. Show us everything. Hold nothing back. If we're going to be part of this, we need to understand it completely." For the next several hours, the committee was immersed in every aspect of the quantum integration program. They experienced the transformations firsthand, witnessed the breakthroughs and setbacks, saw the full spectrum of what human consciousness could become. As the day drew to a close, Zephyra stood with her team, Marcus, Callista, Hayes, the former Wraiths, and all the others who had helped make this possible. Through their quantum perception, they could see the ripples of this day spreading outward, touching futures they could only begin to imagine. "This is it," she said softly. "The moment everything changes." "Phoenix rising from the ashes," Marcus agreed, his form flickering with newfound purpose. They had taken the greatest crisis of their lives, the secrets of Kandahar, the weight of impossible choices, the burden of hidden truths, and transformed it into something revolutionary, something that could change not just their own lives, but the very nature of human existence. The quantum revolution had found its moment of transcendence, and in that moment, they had all become something more than they ever dreamed possible. The future was no longer a single path, but an infinite spectrum of possibility, and they were ready to explore every single one. 6 months after the quantum convergence, Mistral's edge had become a beacon of human potential. The naval base, once a symbol of military might, now stood as humanity's first quantum integration center, its gates open to anyone seeking to understand the new frontier of human consciousness. Zephyra stood at her favorite observation point, watching new arrivals enter the facility. Through her quantum perception, she could see their potential futures unfolding. Scientists, soldiers, civilians, each bringing their own unique perspective to the evolution of human consciousness. "The latest results are in, Doctor." Callista Moonshadow materialized beside her, tablet in hand. "The stable compound has now been successfully administered to over 1,000 individuals worldwide. No rejections, no mental instability, no reality fractures. And the applications keep growing," Colonel Hayes added, his form shifting between states as he joined them. "Medical breakthroughs, scientific discoveries, conflict resolution. Turns out seeing all possible outcomes makes people much better at finding peaceful solutions. Through the quantum field, Zephyra could feel the network of enhanced individuals growing, each new consciousness adding depth and dimension to their shared understanding. The Obsidian Wraiths, once outcasts, had become instrumental in this expansion, their knowledge of underground networks helping them locate and assist others who had been part of the original programs. Marcus just reported in. Sarah Chen appeared, her quantum signature strong and clear. They've found another facility in Eastern Europe, 37 enhanced individuals, all in stasis. We're coordinating with local authorities for their release and integration. Zephyra nodded, feeling the ripples of change spreading across the globe. What had started as a confrontation in a small coastal town had become a worldwide transformation. But it wasn't just about the enhanced abilities or the quantum perception. It was about the understanding that came with seeing all possibilities, all perspectives, all potential futures. Remember when we thought we were fighting for justice? Marcus Voss materialized, his form now permanently balanced between quantum and physical states. Turns out we were fighting for evolution itself. The group moved through the facility, passing training rooms where new initiates learned to navigate multiple realities, research labs where scientists studied the intersection of quantum mechanics and human consciousness, and meditation spaces where enhanced individuals learned to maintain their humanity while exploring their expanded awareness. The gift wasn't the compound, Zephyra realized aloud. It wasn't even the quantum perception. The real gift was understanding that humanity's potential was always infinite. We just needed to learn how to see it. They reached the central chamber, now a vast space where multiple realities converged. Here, enhanced individuals from around the world could connect, share experiences, and work together to solve global challenges. Through quantum perception, they could see teams working on climate change solutions, disease prevention, space exploration, and countless other initiatives that benefited from being able to see all possible outcomes. We've come a long way from tearing up classified documents in the rain, Alaric Voss commented, joining them. His quantum signature had evolved to become one of the most stable. His former anger transformed into passionate advocacy for responsible enhancement. The truth still came out, Zephyra smiled, just not in the way any of us expected. Through their quantum perception, they could see the legacy of their transformation spreading through time, future generations building on their understanding, expanding human consciousness in ways they could only begin to imagine. The Military Oversight Committee's approval had opened doors, but it was the human spirit's natural drive toward understanding that truly propelled them forward. The next phase begins tomorrow, Callista reminded them. The first public quantum integration center opens in Europe, with Asia and Africa following next month. The world is ready. Zephyra looked at her team. Soldiers, scientists, former enemies, all now united in purpose. Through quantum perception, she could see every version of how they had arrived at this moment, every choice that had led them here, every possibility that still lay ahead. We've given humanity more than just new abilities, she said. We've given them new ways to understand themselves, each other, the very nature of reality itself. That's a gift that will keep growing, keep evolving long after we're gone. The quantum field pulsed with agreement, countless enhanced minds across the globe resonating with the truth of her words. They had transformed a military experiment into a revolution of consciousness, a weapon into a tool for understanding, a crisis into an opportunity for universal growth. As the sun set over Mistral's edge, its light refracting through multiple layers of reality, Zephyra felt a deep sense of peace. The weight of Kandahar, the burden of secrets, the pain of impossible choices, all had been transformed into something beautiful and profound. They had become more than soldiers, more than experiments, more than even their enhanced abilities would suggest. They had become bridges between what was and what could be, guides for humanity's next great adventure. The quantum revolution would continue, spreading understanding and possibility to every corner of the globe. And in the end, that was the greatest gift they could offer, the knowledge that within every human being lay the potential for infinite understanding, infinite growth, infinite possibility. The story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.